Welcome to the 58th broadcast of the t-roh Show. It's your host, Keith. I got John with me, and we want to talk about a few things. We talked about last week that we were going to show you how to take your states back, and we always do what we say we're going to do, so here it is. All right, there's a big difference between a citizen and a national. I want to show you something that happened in 1777 that was quickly hushed. And I mean, it couldn't have gotten buried fast enough. It's the, here it is. So they buried this pretty quick. This was a oath and affirmation to a state in 1777. And I'm just going to read it to you. And this is when it was called the state of Pennsylvania. The king came in and changed that name fairly quickly, and he quashed this because he didn't want anybody to know what was going on. So we whose names are hereunto subscribed do solemnly and sincerely declare and swear or affirm that the state of Pennsylvania is of right, ought to be free, sovereign, and an independent state. Notice the state was upper and lowercase letters, as opposed to today when people think the state is something to do with the United States and has nothing to do with it. This was the name of the original state right here, state of Pennsylvania. And I do forever renounce all allegiance, subjection, obedience to the king or crown of Great Britain. That would be two different things. That was the Crown Corporation and the king of Great Britain at the time. And I do further swear or solemnly, sincerely, truly declare and affirm that I never have, since the Declaration of Independence, directly or indirectly aided, assisted, abetted, or anywise countenanced the King of Great Britain, his generals, fleets, and armies, and their adherents in their claims upon these United States. This is what it used to be called. These is plural. So what they did was they took out the SE and called it the United States. Just by taking these two little letters out, changed the whole character. And that I have ever since the Declaration of Independence thereof demeaned myself. This is interesting, as a faithful citizen and subject of this or some one of the United States, and that I will at all times maintain and support the freedom, sovereignty, and independence thereof. Okay, and there were a lot of people that signed this. There was a late prisoner in Europe. Here was one guy. This guy was a laborer. This guy was a merchant. There's 160 pages of this. But what I wanted to talk about was demeaning yourself as a faithful citizen and subject. So when you guys call yourself U.S. citizens, you are actually demeaning yourself by calling yourself that, because back then they were nationals of the states. There were no citizens or subjects. And this was in 1777. This is a accurate document, and it's just basically a book that was put into PDF. So we keep trying to tell people you don't want to be a citizen or subject of the states. Now, the government of the United States of America is nothing more than a national government that is made up of general postmasters. And what we do is we deliver your person from the offshore trust, Internal Revenue Trust, back into the states of the Union. We do not want, we're not advocating that you become citizens or subjects of anything. And when you call yourself an American national, it means that you're a national of all 48 states at once. So you don't have to keep taking an oath and affirmation to different states. It's an oath and affirmation to the United States of America, upper and lowercase, the same style as the Articles of Confederation of 1781, and therefore you become a national of all 50 states of the Union, or 48 states, I think. I think it's 48 or 50, I can't remember. But anyways, that's the reason why we do this, because when we read this, we go, they didn't want citizens or subjects there. And we wanted to go by the original intent of the people that fought the Revolutionary War, that earned their freedom and earned their independence. So they were nationals of the state of Pennsylvania. Well, obviously the king and the Masons came in and quashed that as fast as they possibly could because they didn't want anybody to know what a national was as opposed to a citizen or subject. And that was the reason why they quashed it fairly quickly. Now, if you go over to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it'll state on Article 15, everyone has a right to a nationality. And we had judges today, and you remember, I think there was a couple of episodes ago, I don't know how many we went, but where we were talking about intangible property rights to the use of the public highways. Well, they slowly quashed that over a couple of months because you had judges that were saying, that's not the issue. That's not the issue, whether you have intangible property rights. They kept doing that. And then there was one guy that said, one prosecutor that said, well, it shows here that on the record he does have a driver's license. It's they completely twisted everything around, but that's what Masonic lodges do. That's what Masons do. They twist everything around to get you back to where they want you, which is under their thumb. So it says no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. Okay, and we even had one judge that said, well, I don't think the 50 states have adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, so therefore it doesn't apply. That's a judge now. That's on your side. That's upholding your rights. That's supposed to have a justice in his court. So we know for a fact that the Masonic judges and the Masonic lawyers and all those guys do not have your best interest at heart. They're not there for you. They're there for themselves. So they're there to make money, and that's basically it. So if we go through here, this is what is being done on a lot of the social media. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through media and regardless of frontiers. And a lot of that is being ignored, of course, Now, it even states in here that the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent free voting procedures. And so anybody that says that the UDHR, well, that's the United Nations, that's United, no, the United Nations didn't do it, they just adopted it. It looked good at the time to adopt, so they adopted it. And you have one that is specific. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. Now, citizens give up that right, Article 21.1. And they are stuck with freely chosen representatives right here. But nationals have the right to go directly or through freely chosen representatives. And we're going to explain that. So when you go through and you do a resident declaration and we pass you through to the States of the Union, you're literally, as a national, supposed to get a state national ID card. Now, we have ID cards for you, but, and they're just American national ID cards, but they're not state level ID cards. We do that because we don't want to trespass on the states as a general post office. We're just here to deliver messages back and forth. That's our only purpose. So what we're doing is a lot of people are misinterpreting it as the government of the United States of America is their government. And it's literally not. It's just a national government to get you back into the states so you can take your states back. Okay? Now, we told you right here, everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country. You do. This can't be hijacked by Masons or lawyers or anybody else. They can't hijack that. If they do, it's just hijacking. Is all it is. So directly or through freely chosen representatives. So a national has the right to go directly to the offices within his state and literally use them if he wants to, and all the powers of that office if they want to. And there's a legal way of doing it. I'm not saying it. This is saying it. And it falls under the Privileges and Immunities Act, or Privileges and Immunities Clause. I'll give you an example, and this is where they recognized it, and then basically tore it to pieces. Okay, it's right here. The full text of the amendment reads as follows: the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Right here. Now, these rights, these are called natural rights. And they tried to turn privileges and immunities into something else than what it is. Privileges and immunities are also natural rights, which are universal, which are laid out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So those are all natural rights. And you have the right to go directly to your state government or through a freely chosen representative. But if you'll notice, folks, that you don't really have a freely chosen representative. If you have 30, 40 people going for the office of the governor, usually it's just one, and it's the one that these parties pick. Okay? Either the Democrats or the Republicans, the 527 corporations, they pick the guy that's going to be in there for you. And then it make it appear as if, well, he's going to win. And they start messing around with the polls, and they mess around with this and that, and they think, well, he's going to win, so I just give up. Okay. Now, there's a way to handle this, and you can do this through every election. Now, going in and writing letters to them and saying you suck doesn't work. You have to do this with respect. Once you do it with respect, and you do it in such a way, because the reason why a lot of you guys are rejecting the states and their governments is because you know that those people do not have your best interest. They have proven this over and over and over again. Look at the homeless shelters in California. It's absolutely horrible, horrendous. These people should be ashamed of themselves, but they obviously do not have your best interest at heart in any way, shape, or form. Okay? So this can basically be done through a private membership association or a trust. And a lot of people call it going private, but it's not really. It is kind of like that, but it's a little different. All right. So here's a doc that you can use to get yourself free of all this kind of stuff. You can use a NAT code, which is right here. Everybody's going to say, well, what's a NAT code? And that's a natural area code. That is an address. It's a universal address that allows you to remove yourself from all political boundaries of the state. Now, there's the state of. So you want to use upper and lowercase state. I showed you that in the oath of the state of Pennsylvania. That is the correct one. And then you can use it's all basically within the United States of America. The states that are within the U.S. are called U.S. states, and they're lowercase s. All right, and you can just simply do a notice of withdrawal of representation. In the matter of, and you can put your governor's name here. If you don't like that guy, you can withdraw representation politically. You have a political right to do that. But you're thinking, well, represent me to what? I'm going to show you. Holding the office of the governor for the state of, whatever your state is. Okay. The trustee, you can use a private membership association or trust, hereinafter trustee, feels that the governor of the state of blank, whatever it is, hereinafter governor, does not have the best interest of the trustee in any form of representation of trustee. Now, you can go to the Article 21 of the UDHR and say everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. This is what you'll see what this means in a minute. Trustee hereby chooses the direct alternative to take part in the government of its country, meaning the governor's office of the state of blank itself, and not the governor's name here as a representative of trustee to the governor's office of the state of blank. I'll say that again. That guy in that office, that family in that office, is representing you to that office. He's a representative of your political will to the office of that governor, that governor's office of the state. It's the same with the legislatures. It's the same with judges. It's the same with all of them. The judge is simply directing your case and representing you to the bench that he holds. The bench is public. The bench belongs to everybody. But the Masons and the lawyers have hijacked it from you, from the people. So and I'll show you a doc that demonstrates this. If you see that concept, then you understand your political rights to do this. You have all the political rights in the world. So as a member of whatever party, now we have a lot of people that are part of the North American National Party, and those guys are on the state level. We have chapters in each state, okay? And the trustee hereby withdraws the following political rights. The trustee's vote is hereby withdrawn from that governor, that particular man. Got to put his name here. Trustee's full political power is hereby withdrawn from that governor. Because see, he has that political power. You give it to him, or it's assumed that he has it. It's assumed that the Democrats and Republicans have your political power. So it doesn't take. I mean, it doesn't. Getting rid of your voter's card is not going to do it. Okay, because you didn't specifically say what you were withdrawing and from whom. So it's very arbitrary and very out there. So the trustee's full representation to the governor's office of the state of blank is hereby withdrawn from the man who's holding it. Just because he's holding the office doesn't mean that you have to listen to him. If you believe he doesn't have your best interest at heart, you don't have to listen to him at all as a national. Now, as a citizen or subject, yes, you do. But as a national, you don't. So the trustee's full political support is hereby withdrawn from that governor's name. Okay? Any and all other political, civil, executive, or judicial power is hereby withdrawn from that particular individual and is further hereby reserved until the next election cycle of whatever party wherein the trustee is a member in good standing. So if you don't like the guy that's in there, you can take it out. You can say, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to reserve. And you notice how all these websites have all rights reserved. And people use UCC, all rights reserved, without recourse, and blah, 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 blah. You're not understanding what that means, okay? That means political, judicial, executive power. But just because you have it on a website doesn't mean that that it was used correctly. It's only used when you're dealing with elected officials that are in representation. Okay? Now, the intention of the trustee to protect the interest of your private membership association or your trust, politically or otherwise, these are your intentions. And it is not the intention of the trustee to start a political uprising, revolution, process of removal from office, or any other function that is not necessary. Because you've already withdrawn your political power. That means that whatever that man does in the governor's office does not apply to you. You're not saying that you're not subject to that office. What you're saying is, which strikes out a sovereign citizen BS. Okay, you're not saying that you're not subject to that bench. You're not saying that you're not subject to that legislature. You're saying that you're not subject to whatever that individual does as a representative to those offices, as your representative to those offices. So you're basically removing people that you know do not have your best interest at heart. And if they don't have your best interest, anything they sign, anything they pass while they're in office does not apply to your trust or your private membership association. You do not have to deal with it. So this political decision is taken to protect the family of trustee due to experiencing hostility being used against trustee by the governor's name and the first lady, and hereby claim immunity under natural rights from all actions, political, executive, or otherwise, executed by that governor and all agencies of the aforesaid office. You have that's where your immunities comes in. Those are the rights that are reserved to the people. Now, as long as you're not doing any nefarious acts, and as long as you're not breaking the law and not public law or anything like that, you'll be fine. If you start thinking, hey, I got all this freedom, I can do whatever the hell I want, screw with my neighbor and all that stuff, you're going to get nailed. You're fully liable for that now. Okay, politically, when votes are offered and accepted and representation is granted, it is not honorable to use that grant of political power against those grantors, as has happened in this case from the current office holder and predecessors of the aforesaid office. Predecessors are the people that held this before. Okay, this will get you're claiming immunity from all the predecessors of the aforesaid office, all the way to the beginning, because you can see how things are going right now. You can see how the creditors are, they took private money. They passed the Federal Reserve Act. They did all these things. They trafficked your person offshore, handed you over as collateral for their debt. They did all kinds of stuff to you. But we're talking about the people that hold the office, not the office itself. There's two separate things there. So these governors represented you to that office and pushed your butt offshore, pushed your person offshore, and then came in and said to that office, okay, I represent that individual. Now that individual under federal law is now an enemy of this office. It's exactly what they did. So imagine the governor looking at the office and saying, okay, I represent so-and-so, and he's telling the office that you've been trafficked offshore, you're now a U.S. citizen, and now you're an enemy of that office that he's holding, which is exactly what they're doing on paper. And they're doing it on behalf of foreigners, foreign creditors that all want their global world government and want everybody to worship them and all that kind of stuff. Okay, now the trustee is in honor to remove said political power and all human and natural rights and reserve them until the next election cycle as communicated as all rights reserved, and shall self-govern under the bylaws of the private membership association or the terms and conditions of a trust until all hostilities cease under peaceful settlement of disputes. This is a personal political decision, and trustee does not recommend for others to follow unless qualified. So if you do not know what you're doing and you don't read that state constitution and understand the powers there of those offices, which you need to do, you need to go read them and realize that as a national, when you take your oath and affirmation to the United States of America as a national, you have the right to use their access to those offices. It's not me saying it. It was the UDHR saying it. And this has been a common practice for ever since governments began. And that's why all the people way back when they were taking oaths to their states, never worried about the state being taken over by political parties and all this, because they said, I'll use the office, because they were qualified. They learned the law of nations and understood. So if the governor arbitrarily made him an enemy, he just wrote a letter in the name of that office under that seal and basically reversed it. Signed it. I had two witnesses sign it, and now it was published. And once it was published, that guy who holds the office couldn't do a damn thing. The guy they call governor could not do a thing. I'll say that again. The office of the governor, if that governor says that he's an enemy or he's this or he's that, the individual that he's representing, he just turns around and in the name of the same office, he just reverses it and publishes it. And the guy who's holding office couldn't do a thing to change it. You got anything to add on that, John?
No, sir, not really. Well, the thing of it is, when you recall your vote, all you're doing is reclaiming your power of attorney, where the man himself can't speak for you. You still basically have to follow the laws of the government, but not of the individual office holder.
Right. Anything he signs, you don't have to follow.
That's correct.
And if he comes out and signs something you don't agree with or whatever, you just reverse it once he has notice of this.
The post office puts out a document, the Congress puts out a document. Uh, all American nationals have to follow those. Mm-hmm. But if it's directed by the office holder himself, then it doesn't necessarily have to if he's withdrawn his power of attorney.
Right. And also your judicial power can be taken from anybody in the legislature.
Yes, you can.
Actually, from all of them. You can actually take it from a completely separate political party.
Yep, absolutely.
They're using all of your natural rights against you. That's what we keep trying to tell people. Who is at fault for this country going in the direction it's going? It's the people's fault because they don't understand that they're casting their judicial rights, their executive powers. Where do you think the governor gets it? It comes from the people. So it had to come from you. You have executive power, judicial power, political power. All those things are being used against you. They're representing you to those offices that you're voting them in for. And if you knew that you could do it directly, why would you vote them in? That's the whole thing. Everyone has the right to take part in government of his country directly, right here, or through freely chosen representatives. Well, if you know the man doesn't have your interest at heart and he's screwing you left and right, you stop it by withdrawing everything from you. He's got nothing because everyone was created equal. And this is how you level the playing field. All of a sudden, it's no more fun to be in those offices because there's no force and effect for anything that they do. There's another doc that I have that I wanted to get through. This was something that I found, this was years ago. I was looking in the archives, my archives, and I found this whole thing. And I'm going to read this to you. It's 8 pages. So listen to what this guy says and how he says it, and you'll get an idea of the mindset that you have to have in order to be able to properly do this. That you're not angry at them, you don't want to go after them or nothing. You're just removing what they've taken and been using against you on behalf of their state within a state, their private association, their secret society. Okay? According to the procedure established by directives, cases of this kind were not tried by a jury, but a panel of 3 judges appointed by the Bureau of Economic Planning and National Resources. The procedure the directives had stated was to be informal and democratic. The judges' bench had been removed from the old Philadelphia courtroom for this occasion and replaced by a table on a wooden platform. It gave the room an atmosphere suggesting the kind of meeting where a presiding body puts something over on a mentally retarded membership. One of the judges, and you'll get what this is about in a minute, one of the judges acting as prosecutor had read the charges. You may now offer whatever plea you wish to make in your own defense, he announced. Facing the platform, his voice inflectionless and peculiar clear, Hank Reardon answered, I have no defense. Do you? The judge stumbled. He had not expected it to be that easy. Do you throw yourself at the mercy of this court? I do not recognize this court's right to try me. The guy said, what? I do not recognize this court's right to try me. But Mr. Reardon, this is a legally appointed court to try this particular category of crime. I do not recognize my action as a crime. But you have admitted that you have broken our regulations controlling the sale of your metal. I do not recognize your right to control the sale of my metal. Is it necessary for me to point out that your recognition is not required? No, I'm fully aware of it, and I'm acting accordingly. He noted that the stillness of the room, by rules of the complicated pretense which all those people played for one another's benefit, they should have considered his stand as incomprehensible folly. There should have been rustles of astonishment and derision. There were none. They sat still. They understood. Do you mean that you're refusing to obey the law? Asked the judge. No, I'm complying with the law to the letter. Your law holds that my life, my work, and my property may be disposed of without my consent. Very well. You may now dispose of me without my participation in the matter. I will not play the part of defending myself where no defense is possible. I will not simulate the illusion of dealing with a tribunal of justice. But Mr. Reardon, the law provides specifically that you'll be given an opportunity to present your side of the case and to defend yourself. The prisoner brought to trial can defend himself only if there's an objective principle of justice recognized by his judges, a principle upholding his rights, which they may not violate and which he can revoke. The law by which you are trying me holds that where there are no principles, that I have no rights, and that you may do with me whatever you please. Very well, do it. Mr. Reardon saw the law which you're denouncing is based on the highest principle, the principle of the public good. Reardon says, who is the public? What is it? What does it hold as its good? There was a time when men believed that the good was the concept of being defined by a code of moral values, and that no man had the right to seek his good through the violation of the rights of another. If it is now believed that my fellow men may sacrifice me in any manner they please for the sake of whatever they deem to be their own good, if they believe that they may seize my property simply because they need it, well, so does any burglar. There's only a difference, only this difference. The burglar does not ask me to sanction his action. The group of seats at the side of the courtroom was reserved for the prominent visitors who had come from New York to witness the trial. Dagny sat motionless, and her face showed nothing but a solemn attention, the attention of listening, with the knowledge that flows of his words would determine the course of her life. Eddie Willers sat beside her. James Taggart had not come. Paul Larkin sat hunched forward, his face thrust out, pointed like an animal's muzzle, sharpened by a look of fear now turning into malicious hatred. Mr. Moen, who sat beside him, was a man of greater innocence and smaller understanding. His fear was of simpler nature. He listened in bewildered indignation and whispered to Larkin, "Good God, now he's done it. Now he'll convince the whole country that all businessmen are enemies of the public good." Here's the judge. "Are we to understand," asked the judge, "that you hold your own interest above the interest of the public?" He said, "I hold that such question can never arise except in a society of cannibals." He says, "What? What do you mean?" "I hold that there's no clash of interest among men who do not demand and the unearned and do not practice human sacrifices." "Are we to understand that if the public deems it necessary to curtail your profits, you do not recognize that's right, its right to do so?" "Why, yes, I do. The public may curtail my profits anytime it wishes by refusing to buy my product." "We are speaking of other methods. Any other method of curtailing profits is a method of looters, and I recognize it as such." "Mr. Reardon, this is hardly the way to defend yourself." "I said that I would not defend myself." "But this is unheard of. Do you realize the gravity of the charge against you?" "I do not care to consider it." "Do you realize the possible consequences of your stand?" "Fully." "It is the opinion of this court that the facts presented by the prosecution seem to warrant no leniency. The penalty which this court has the power to impose on you is extremely severe." He said, "Go ahead. I beg your pardon. Impose it." The three judges looked at one another. Then their spokesman turned back to Reardon. "This is unprecedented," he said. "It is completely irregular," said the second judge. "The law requires you to submit a plea in your own defense. Your only alternative is to state for the record that you throw yourself upon the mercy of the court. I do not, but you have to. Do you mean that what you expect from me is some sort of voluntary action? Yes. I volunteer nothing, but the law demands that the defendant's side be represented on the record. Do you mean that you need my help to make this procedure legal? Well, no. Yes, that is to complete the form. I will not help you. The third and youngest judge, who had acted as prosecutor, snapped impatiently. This is ridiculous and unfair. Do you want it to let it look as if a man of your prominence had been railroaded without a... He cut himself off short. Somebody at the back of the courtroom emitted a long whistle. I want, said Reardon gravely, to let the nature of this procedure appear exactly for what it is. If you need my help to disguise it, I will not help you. But we are giving you a chance to defend yourself, and and it is you who are rejecting it. I will not help you pretend that I have a chance. I will not help you to preserve the appearance of righteousness where rights are not recognized. I will not help you to preserve an appearance of rationality by entering a debate in which a gun is the final argument. I will not help you pretend that you are administering justice. But the law compels you to volunteer a defense. There was laughter in the back of the courtroom. That is the flaw of your theory, gentlemen, said Reardon gravely. I will not help you out of it. If you choose to deal with men by means of compulsion, do so. But you will discover that you need a voluntary cooperation of your victims in many more ways than you can see at present. And your victims should discover that it is their own volition, which you cannot force, that makes you possible. I choose to be consistent and will obey you in the manner you demand. Whatever you wish me to do, I will do at the point of a gun. If you sentence me to jail, you will have to send armed men to carry me there. I will not volunteer to move. If you fine me, you will have to seize my property and collect the fine. I will not volunteer to pay it. If you believe you have the right to force me, use your guns openly, I will not help you disguise the nature of your action. The eldest judge leaned forward, and I always notice this, John. They always like to lean forward for some reason, like it's supposed to be some kind of intimidation BS.
Yeah, look down on you.
Yeah, they try to pull that crap.
Yeah.
Across the table, with his voice became suasively derisive. You speak as if you were fighting for some sort of principle, Mr. Reardon, but you were actually fighting for. But what you were actually fighting for is your property, isn't it? Yes, of course, I'm fighting for my property. Do you know the kind of principle that represents? You pose as a champion of freedom, but it's only the freedom to make money that you are after. Yes, of course. All I want is the freedom to make money. Do you know what that freedom implies? Surely, Mr. Reardon, you wouldn't want your attitude to be misunderstood. You wouldn't want to give support to the widespread impression that you are a man devoid of social conscience, who feels no concern for the welfare of his fellows and works for nothing but his own profit. I work for nothing but my own profit. I earn it. There was a gasp, not of indignation, but of astonishment, in the crowd behind him, and silence from the judges he faced. He went on calmly. No, I do not want my attitude to be misunderstood. I shall be glad to state it for the record. I am in full agreement with the facts of everything said about me in the newspapers, with the facts, but not with the evaluation. I work for nothing but my own profit, which I make by selling a product they need to men who are willing and able to buy it. I do not produce it for the benefit at the expense of mine. I do not sacrifice my interest to them, nor do they sacrifice theirs to me. We deal as equals by mutual consent to mutual advantage, and I am proud of every penny that I have earned in this manner. I am rich, and I am proud of every penny I own. I made my money by my own effort, and in free exchange and through voluntary consent of every man I dealt with, the voluntary consent of those who employed me when I started, the voluntary consent of those who work for me now, the voluntary consent of those who buy my product. I shall answer all questions you are afraid to ask me openly. Do I wish to pay my workers more than their services are worth to me? I do not. Do I wish to sell my product for less than my customers are willing to pay? I do not. Do I wish to sell it at a loss or give it away? I do not. If this is evil, do whatever you please about me, according to whatever standards you hold. These are mine. I am earning my own living as every honest man must. I refuse to accept as guilt the fact of my own existence and the fact that I must work in order to support it. I refuse to accept as guilt the fact that I must work in order. I refuse to accept as guilt that I'm able to do it and do it well. I refuse to accept as guilt the fact that I am able to do it better than most people. The fact that my work is of greater value than the work of my neighbors, and that more men are willing to pay me. I refuse to apologize for my money. If this is evil, then make the most of it. If this is what the public finds harmful in its interest, let the public destroy me. This is my code, and I will accept no other. I could say to you that I have done more for good for my fellow men than you can ever hope to accomplish. But I will not say it because I do not seek the good of others as a sanction for my right to exist, nor do I recognize the good of others as a sanction for my right to exist, nor do I recognize the good of others as a justification for their seizure of my property or for the destruction of my life. I will not say that the good of others was the purpose of my work. My own good was my purpose, and I despise the man who surrenders his. I could say to you that you do not serve the public good, that nobody's good can be achieved at the price of human sacrifices, that when you violate the rights of one man, you have violated the rights of all, and the public's of rightless creatures is doomed to destruction. I could say to you that you will and can achieve nothing but universal devastation, as any looter must when he runs out of victims. I could say it, but I won't. It is your particular policy that I challenge, but your moral premise. If it were true that men could achieve their good by means of turning some men into sacrificial animals, and I were asked to immolate myself for the sake of creatures who wanted to survive at the price of my blood, if I were asked to serve the interests of society apart from, above, and against my own, I would refuse. I would reject it as most contemptible evil. I would fight it in every power, with every power I possess. I would fight the whole of mankind. If 1 minute were all I could last before I were murdered, I would fight in the full confidence of the justice of my battle and the living being's right to exist. Let there be no misunderstanding about me. If it is now the belief of my fellow men who call themselves the public that their good requires victims, then I say the public good be damned. I will have no part of it. The crowd burst into applause. Reardon whirled around, more startled than the judges. He saw faces that laughed in violent excitement and faces that pleaded for him. He saw their silent despair breaking out into open. He saw that the same anger, indignation as his own, finding release of the wild defiance of their cheering. He saw the looks of admiration and looks of hope. There were also the faces of loose-mouthed young men and maliciously unkempt females, the kind who led the booing in newsreel theaters at any appearance of a businessman on the screen. They did not attempt a counter-demonstration. They were silent. As he looked at the crowd, people saw in his face what the threats of the judges had not been able to evoke, the first sign of emotion. It was a few moments before they heard the furious beating of the gavel upon the table and one of the judges yelling, or I shall have the courtroom cleared. As he turned back to the table, Reardon's eyes moved over to the visitors section. His glance paused on Dagny, a pause perceptible only to her, as if he were saying, "It works." She would have appeared calm, except her eyes seemed to have become too large for her face. Eddie Willers was smiling in a kind of smile that a man's substitute for breaking into tears. Mr. Moen looked stupefied. Paul Larkin was staring at the floor. There was no expression on Bertram Scudder's face, or Lillian's. She sat at the end of the row, her legs crossed, a mink stole slanting from her right shoulder to her left hip. She looked at Reardon, not moving. In the complex violence of all the things he felt, he had time to recognize a touch of regret and of longing. There was a face he had hoped to see. He looked from the start of the session at wanted to be present more than any other face around him, but Francisco and Konya had not come. "Mr. Reardon," said the eldest judge, smiling affably, reproaching and spreading his arms, "it is regrettable that you should have misunderstood us so completely. That's the trouble, that businessmen refuse to approach us in the spirit of trust and friendship." I'm sorry, I had to laugh on that one. "They seem to imagine that we are their enemies. Why do you speak of human sacrifices? What made you go to such an extreme? We have no intention of seizing your property or destroying your life. We do not seek to harm your interest. We are fully aware of your distinguished achievements. Our purpose is only to balance social pressures and do justice to all. This hearing is really intended not as a trial, but as a friendly discussion aimed at mutual understanding and cooperation. Reardon says, I do not cooperate at the point of a gun. Why speak of guns? This matter is not serious enough to warrant such references. We are fully aware that the guilt in this case lies chiefly with Mr. Kenneth Daniger, who instigated this infringement of the law, who exerted pressure upon you, and who confessed his guilt by disappearing in order to escape trial. No, we did it by equal, mutual, voluntary agreement. Mr. Reardon, said the second judge, you may not share some of your ideas, but when all is said and done, we are all working for the same cause, for the good of the people. We realize that you were prompted to disregard the legal technicalities by a critical situation of coal mines and crucial importance of fuel to the public welfare. No, I was prompted by my own profit, my own interest. What effect it had on the coal mines and the public welfare is for you to estimate. That was not my motive. Mr. Mullen stared dazedly about him and whispered to Paul Larkin, something's gone screwy here. And, oh, shut up, snapped Larkin. I am sure, Mr. Reardon, said the eldest judge, that you do not really believe, nor does the public, that we wish to treat you as a sacrificial victim. If anyone has been laboring order such a misapprehension, we are anxious to prove it that is not true. The judges retired to consider their verdict. They did not stay out long. They returned to an ominously silent courtroom, and announced that the fine was $5,000, was imposed on Henry Reardon, but that sentence was suspended. Streaks of jeering laughter ran through the applause, that swept the courtroom. The applause was aimed at Reardon, the laughter at the judges. Reardon stood motionless, not turning to the crowd, barely hearing the applause. He stood looking at the judges. There was no triumph in his face, no elation, only the still intensity of contemplating a vision with bitter wonder that was almost fear. It was seeing that the enormity of the smallness of the enemy who was destroying the world. He felt as if, after the journey of years through a landscape of devastation, past the ruins of great factories and wrecks of powerful engines and bodies of invincible men, he had come upon the despoiler, expecting to find a giant, and he had found a rat eager to scurry for cover at the first sound of the human step. If this is what has beaten us, he thought, the guilt is ours. He was jolted back into the courtroom by people pressing to surround him. He smiled and answered their smiles to the frantic, tragic eagerness of their faces, and there was a touch of sadness in his smile. God bless you, Mr. Reardon, said an old woman with a ragged shawl over her head. Can't you save us, Mr. Reardon? They're eating us alive, and it's no use fooling anybody about how it's the rich that they're after. Do you know what is happening to us? Listen, Mr. Reardon, said the man who looked at it like a factory worker. It's the rich who are selling us down the river. Tell those wealthy bastards we're so anxious to give everything away, who are so anxious to give everything away, that when they give away their palaces, they're giving away the skin off our backs. I know it, said Reardon. The guilt is ours, he thought. If we were to be the movers, the providers, the benefactors of mankind, we're willing to let the brand of evil be stamped upon us and silently to bear punishment for our virtues. What sort of good do we expect to triumph in the world? He looked at the people around him. They had cheered him today. They had cheered him by the side of the track of John Galt Line. But tomorrow they would clamor for a new directive from Wesley Mouch and a free housing project of Orrin Boyle, while Boyle's girders collapsed upon their heads. They would do it because they would do it. They would be told to forget as a sin that which had made them cheer Hank Reardon. Why were they ready to renounce their highest moments as a sin? Why were they willing to betray the best within them? What made them believe that this earth was a realm of evil where despair was their natural fate? Listen to that. Listen to that carefully, because this is what people believe. And this is what is destroying you. Why were they ready to renounce their highest moments as a sin? Why were they willing to betray the best within them? What made them believe that this earth was a realm of evil where despair was their natural fate? He could not name the reason, but he knew that it had to be named. He felt it as a huge question mark within the courtroom, which was now his duty to answer. This was the real sentence imposed upon him, he thought, to discover what idea, that simple idea available to the simplest man. He made mankind accept the doctrines that led it to self destruction. Hank, I'll never think that it's hopeless. Not ever again, said Dagny that evening after the trial. I'll never be tempted to quit. You've proved the right always works and always wins. She stopped, then added, provided one knows what is right. It's that simple, folks. You believe that your natural fate is evil. And that needs to stop. You got to stop destroying yourselves. The very people that are doing it, now that people are on them and know what's going on, are now doing this. Freemasons leader appeals for the end to discrimination of members. Freemasons have been undeservedly stigmatized, the organization leader has said, and will be running a series of open evenings to prove it is not a secret society. Yeah, but you won't have any of your members naked sitting there, which is what they do, by the way. That's initiation. The United Grand Lodge of England placed adverts in 3 national newspapers, including the Daily Telegraph, headlined "Enough is enough." Oh, I know. And they threatened us when we were sending them stuff. Y'all better make this go away. You know, that only works within your society, guys. Just letting you know, we don't have to listen to you. That only works in your little secret society. You can act like that towards your members, but guys that are not your members, we're equals. So you know where to stuff that, right? Saying it is a victim of representation. Chief Executive Dr. David Staples said it had written to the Equality and Human Rights Commission about concerns of 200,000 plus members are the victims of gross misrepresentation and discrimination. Oh, you mean the one that you created? So you created this commission. You created the commission, and now you're going to write as if it's some separate commission. We know you guys created it. You said at the United Grand Lodge of England, we value honesty, integrity, and service to the community above all. Last year, we raised over $33 million for good causes. But how much of that $33 million got to the people that needed it? Apparently, it didn't get anywhere except for your pockets.
That's 33 million pounds too, which is $1.50 a pound.
Yeah, this is how much these guys bring in. They bring it in from court cases, from taxes, all that fun stuff. As an organization, we welcome individuals from all walks of life. Well, who came up with the term individuals? You guys did. And how many offshore trusts have you trafficked their persons to? Of any race, faith, age, class, or political persuasion? Well, yeah, we know about the age thing, under 18. We know about that. And of any race? I don't think so. No, they don't do that. Dr. Stables added, throughout our 300-year history, we know about your 300-year history, when people have suffered discrimination, Freemasonry has embraced them into our lodges as equals. Well, who implemented the discrimination? That would be you guys. You guys did that. And now you're self-projecting on other people that you guys are suffering discrimination because everybody knows about all your crap. I think Reardon knew about it too. United Grand Lodge of England believes that the ongoing gross misrepresentation of its 200,000 plus members is discrimination, pure and simple. Well, you can believe it all you want, but the deal is everybody's got your number. So what they're doing is, that's not called discrimination. Okay? That's called punishment, Mr. Staples. You're being punished for the crap you're doing. And you don't like it. Aw. Where's my little teeny violin? Our members shouldn't have to feel undeservedly stigmatized. Well, you mean the same way that you've made everyone else feel stigmatized? Do unto others as you had them do unto you. The law applies. It's called natural law. No other organization will stand for this, and nor should we. All the other organizations have stood with it and have dealt with it from your organization since their organization started. Um, uh, wasn't it you guys that came up with the sovereign citizen thing and started nailing all these organizations? And when they start fighting back, now you're saying we're being discriminated against.
Isn't it interesting? They write the rules and regulations, and then bitch and complain because they have to follow them themselves.
Yeah, it's horrible. He says, I have written the Equality and Human Rights Commission to make this case. Okay, the guy that's the head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission is also a Mason. Why? Because you have a monopoly on everything. This is the dumbest thing I have ever seen in my entire life. And folks, you're being taken over, and all your rights are being taken by people like this that try to pull this kind of crap and expect nobody to see through it. This is how stupid they think you are. Enough is enough. Oh, shut up. You're full of it. He added that people might have questions about Freemasonry and that members will be hosting a Q&A sessions across the country. Don't worry about it, bro. We know all about you. We've seen your Bible. We know you're supposed to kill Christians. We know that you're supposed to do all kinds of things, and we know all the gods that you worship and all that kind of crap. We've seen it all. I appreciate them, and you may have questions about who we are and what we do. So why not ask those who know? We've already done that, and guess what you do? You shut up real fast. Because why? Because when people ask questions about you, you kill them, and they answer, you kill them, because they have a blood oath of secrecy. That is the very definition of secret society. And when you have a monopoly in all the courts everywhere, and nobody in there has a chance in hell, and when somebody brings in reason, like intangible property rights and things like that, and you guys just shut it out, what do you think people are going to do? They're going to treat you the same way you're treating them. You've brought this on yourself. And I don't see a very long future for Freemasons. Kind of like the same time when you murdered somebody back in the 1800s for telling the truth in the newspaper about your organization, and you went and drowned him in a pond. And when you did that, you lost a bunch of members because you murdered somebody for talking about your not secret society. So no one's going to fall for this crap. This is stupid. All they're doing is a light has been shown on you, and all the rats are scurrying. A light's been shown on you. Okay? And by the way, I believe in December, was the 21-year anniversary that your society has had some form of warrant out on me, a bench warrant out on me over what? Over what, guys? Chief Executive Dr. David Staples, over what? A stupid driver's license. I've been fighting you for 21 years to keep my person from being trafficked offshore. For 20 that's the 21 years there. Been doing this for a lot longer, but 21 years. I have had to live in America under the threat of being shot, killed, face thrown in the dirt, screwed over in the courts, life torn apart, everything. A lot of people don't know my past. I had to move because the Masons were gang stalking me. I had to move out of a house where I have had no complaints, no nothing. Had broken one law for 18 years. Everything's been cool, was cool for 18 years with very easy neighbor. Don't trespass on people's property. Don't screw with them. Don't mess with them. Don't even push or push my political views on them or nothing. Don't do a thing. But for 21 years, that has been life in America under these guys. And I expect it to be there as long as they can do, because guess what? It's because you guys are hungry for power, and you have turned society into a cannibalistic society, and that's called socialism. You're communists, and you destroy everything you touch, everything, no matter what. You haven't helped anybody. You haven't done any good for the country. The good of the country is done in spite of you, from real people that are not a part of your organization, really good people that are not a part of it. You're the stain on the white T-shirt. You're the pain in the ass that everybody would just wish go away. But because of your secret society, I've had to live looking over my shoulder. Why? I haven't broken one law. I know that you're trying to get me to break the law, and you've tried it over and over and over. Many, many times. How many times, John?
I don't know. It's too many to count.
How many times have they tried to entrap us? Just you and me, just for the last 5, 6 years. At least 25 times.
Too many to count.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least 25 times of entrapment. They've tried to get us to stumble. They've tried to do anything. But what do we keep doing? We keep following the law.
Yes, we do. They've tried at least 6 times to take it through the bank
Mm-hmm.
by commandeering our currency, getting us to agree to let them finance it, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. They have done everything they can possibly do to have us stumble, to put barriers in our way, to what do you call it? They trash my name in the on the internet through their agents.
Yep.
They've done everything they could possibly do, but guess what, folks? They still can't get us to violate the law.
Vatican tried it. The Knight Templars tried it. The Moors have tried it, and just people right after the other.
Yeah, to get in to get it corrupted.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. So guess what does that prove? That proves that your excuses for coming into a country with your what do you call it, your faltered policies and all your excuses and crap. No, we don't need you to keep us in line. We don't need you to follow the law. You're not needed, Mr. Mason. 21 years in December. Over what? A driver's license. Driver's license, folks. Nothing else. They've not been charged with one other thing but a driver's license. And apparently, according to the sheriff down in Texas the other day, if you have a suspended license, that's a death offense. And they did. They murdered him. Now, why is this so important that you have a driver's license, folks? It's so you agree with their trafficking. They need your consent. They need your consent to you being trafficked offshore. But guess what? The treaty says otherwise. You never had consent. You never had consent of 450 million people. That's 450 million counts of trafficking in persons that your organization is guilty of. Guilty. So don't sit there and start whining about discrimination, because it's going to be heard as a bunch of whiners. We got discrimination. Or it's going to be heard as some kind of political ploy. It's a joke. 21 years, folks. They've had some sort of bench warrant that they even manufactured. They did their best to manufacture it. 21 years. That's what it's like living in America. So all these people coming to America, just wait till you hit the courtrooms where the Masons are in charge. Just wait. You think it's great here? You've been wanting to get the hell out of here fast. Because they have a cannibalistic system here. They destroy others they rob Peter to pay Paul. It's constant. They're not here in your interests. They do not have your interests at heart. We have proof. Undeniable proof. So this whole thing, I just know that the whole court system in this country is nothing more than a joke. It's sacrifice this guy to pay this guy, steal this and steal that, do whatever the hell they want to do. And it's okay to murder people. It's okay to shoot them. I think a Texas sheriff said that. It's okay, just go ahead. He even said, I don't care. I'm getting tired of this. I don't want to do this. And now he's hiding like a little rat in his house.
Well, they passed a law that it's illegal to shoot people when they passed the Patriot Act. Mm-hmm. They could send the military out and murder you.
That's right.
And the sheriff's department follows that same policy.
Yep, and their new world order is no different than the old world order. You haven't changed your spots.
That's right. Just change the people in charge of it.
Mm-hmm. You're doing the same thing you did before, over and over and over again. But the penalties after you die, a little bit harsher than they are here. Today, you might whine and cry like a little girl about discrimination. But the penalties after you die are much greater. Nobody over there puts up with that crap. I've seen it. By witnesses, multiple witnesses. So, that's it, folks. If you want to know how to get out of it, you can reserve your rights. And when they violate that, you sue the crap out of them for doing it. One murmur of sovereign citizen, one murmur of this or that, you follow the law. And you follow the rights and natural rights that you have. And there's nothing they can do. Because you're equal to them, guys. You got to realize that you're equal. They're no greater than you. You're no greater than them. But they sure as hell make you think they are. Because they gang up on you. They hunt you. Just like nothing more than a gang. Or looters or criminals. That's how they operate. Same thing over and over and over. No difference. And watch when they crash the dollar, which they should here in just a little while. They'll come up with another scheme. It's another scam. Whatever comes out of their mouth, it's another scam. No matter what it is. And one day, you'll stop believing them. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, you'll wise up and stop believing them. It's going to be another scam. So, thank you for listening to the 58th broadcast of the T-roh Show. We do like the likes and we do like the subscribes. Please subscribe if you like the content, and we'll talk to you sometime next week. Thanks for listening.